Hey, welcome to the show. Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour. I'm Arif Halaby along with Jeff Gerard on your place for news talk, information, ideas, retirement planning tips, really how to get out of debt, manage your money, plan for the future, your retirement. Doesn't have to be your mother's or even grandmother's or grandfather's retirement, does it? It's a different world these days when you're trying to think about retirement. It's really almost like another phase in life where there's a career change. Jeff, we're not finding retirement planning being built about, okay, I'm going to go to the mountains and just sit on a rocking chair or go to the ocean and wait to die. I mean, it's different these days.
That's right. Well, you better be off the grid if you're talking like that because retirement's expensive, guys, believe it or not. It used to be this destination, right? And just like Arif said, you wait for this moment in time and then you get the gold watch from your company and then the pension starts and then Social Security kicks in and couple rocks back and forth, and that's pretty much it. That's all it used to be. At least that's the way it kind of was for my great-grandparents, for their folks, their parents, grandparents, and we saw the change. And I've seen it in my lifetime shift from people sitting around, as you've called it, Arif, waiting to die. Now people are active. They start second, third, sometimes their fourth career. I mean, how many? We have a client with how many pensions? I mean, he's done like
5,
at least 10 years with several different organizations or entities. So we're seeing that. And I mean, when we say 70 is the new 60, 80 could be the new 70, we have a whole new breath of life in retirement, I think, nowadays.
Yeah, think of it this way. A lot of people will get to the place where they have one source of retirement income, and the plan or the goal should be to have multiple sources of retirement income. Whether it's the job you work for, the pension, maybe your spouse has a pension, maybe you have a retirement account that is specific to your name, maybe your spouse has one that's specific to their name. And what that does is it gives you different things that can impact your future, meaning let's say you had, we have a client. They have everything tied up in one apartment building.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, it's a big apartment building. It's millions of dollars, actually. And that is their one main source of both living and retirement. Okay, wonderful. Unless there's a fire or flood. Oh, Arif, I have insurance. That's great, but there's something called a deductible.
That's right.
And it's usually hundreds of thousands of dollars, 200, 300, 400. That means that's money that you have to pay out of your pocket before the insurance company starts writing checks. Okay, so these are very important parts to the process. Remember this, you are not going to be in a position to go back to work in your same field 3, 4, 5, 6 years after you retire. Because for a lot of people, you're in a field where technology can adjust and it moves forward.
That's right.
Relationships change.
Yes.
Somebody else took your job. You're no longer the person, right? You were, even if you were a supervisor or a boss and you went out to lunch once a month with those people and those friends and family, and then they couldn't make it one day, and then all of a sudden nobody, 2 people, can maybe next month, and then the summer, and then we're going to be gone for a couple months, and then you just kind of fade off into the future towards what is it going to take for people to get to the place where they kind of forget you. So remember that's an important part of your life. It's not just the relationships that you have, it's the skill set you have. And that can change.
It sure can. And I've talked to a number of relatives that have retired, and they said, and I'm sorry to say this out loud, but they said it's one of the worst things that they've done after they've done it. And they think it's, there's that kind of the honeymoon phase, if you will. Right after you retire, you're going to get that honey-do list done, and you're going to clean out the garage and do all those projects. And then and then 3 months later, they're going, what do I do next? Okay, we've traveled, we've done these things, and we're going to continue to do that. But the kids have moved away. Grandkids are, spread across the country. Now what do we do? And they look for the sense of value that came with, and I've seen this across the board, that came with their job. That became their identity. And we've spent a whole show, I know, in the past talking about this, creating value for yourself beyond the financial aspect in retirement, because it is so important, because we identify with what we do. And you can go to a party, you can go to a get together and say, what do you do? And, or what do you do for a living? And someone will say, I am a.
That's right.
And they identify with exactly what they do. And that's the first thing they say.
Yeah, that's what they call themselves, is the whatever.
That's right.
And I think your family and yourself needs to realize that in this process and changing of life, there's going to be almost like something has died. Jeff, we have seen that the psychological change that happens in retirement, it's much more than just, okay, now I can do all the things that I want to do. Oh, so I always ask, what do you plan on doing when you retire? Oh, Arif, I have a list of things. I'm going to be busy for a year. I mean, look, I'll be busier when I retire than when I'm working.
Right.
Okay, certainly there'll be different things to do, and I expect you to be busy. But I also think what's going to happen is you will get to the place where you go, okay, that's nice. I did a lot of things. Life was good. I was busy. But it didn't take a year. It took 6 months, 3 months. And now what do? Now what changes your life? And that's where it really comes in, is that outlook. Hey, Jeff, one of the things that we've seen is people start to volunteer. Now, the volunteer part of life is very important because it really gets into how are you planning your life around value. And when you mention that, a lot of people are saying, well, what happens to my family? What happens to my life? And it's really a big part of who you are. And I think that matters a lot when you are working on, how are you going to be that person that's really important and valuable in other people's lives. So,
well, and I think a good place to start, I mean, we all have the hobbies that we all wish that we can do or had the time to do. But beyond that, I mean, because you can only play so much golf, and someone might say, I can play 36 holes. Great. You can only catch so many fish. Wonderful. You can do that from morning to night. But does that really fulfill you? And maybe it does. But I would say the volunteer side of things, giving back your time to an affinity to that you have to an industry, to something that did something for you. Naturally, we see a lot of folks that had high paying positions, and they say, I'm going to stay on as a consultant. And I can do that for 2 or 3 years. Well, that's great because the money's there. But what really drives you? What makes you feel important? As Arif was saying, what brings you value? And giving back a lot of times is that thing that fills that niche for people in a lot of cases. And wouldn't it be wonderful that if something or someone changed your life, that you were able to go back now that you have the time and maybe the resource to where you say, look, I don't have to get paid very much, if anything at all, to go teach in my field, something that you've learned for the last 20 or 30 years. Give that to a young person now just getting into that industry. How wonderful would that be?
Yeah, think of it this way. Because I want you to stay valuable in your career field, and I want you to stay valuable in your, what's happening with your systems in your job. Think about mentoring young people at entry-level positions of the job that you used to be a part of. And we're seeing a lot of people that are educators walk through the process of educating and teaching and walking through. What is it going to take to help a young educator figure out the pitfalls, where to be strong, what they can, listen, there's something to be said with kid, you're out of school. When I was your age, right. Forget everything you learned. Now it's the real world, right? It happens in a lot of trades. Well, some of that is true, right? Some of it, sometimes educators of a particular field are out of touch with the actual trade, day-to-day work life. But you could be that person that walks in there and really gets that experience and walks through and explains that to people. I think that's an important part of it.
Well, it is. And I think we've both been through some, in our previous lives before the financial world, at least in our early working years, we've had those folks that when we came into an industry or a field where, you come in with really wide eyes and your ears are even bigger and you're trying to learn everything and pay attention and navigate through something that's brand new to you. Only to find out that, like you said, of everything you learn, forget about that, because the veterans come in and they tell you the real story. So I think that's still very valuable. And even if you're young and you kind of don't want to hear it all, there's still some really, really big importance that comes with that. So I think maintaining those relationships, it does a few things. Number one, it can help you bring some value to yourself. And it also continues to keep you sharp, because that was one of the things that I had heard from retired folks that, after a while, they kind of forget some of those skill sets and some of those things because they're not sharpening the tool very much anymore. You kind of don't have to think about that anymore. So I used to remember that. And I know some very bright people with fantastic memories that the information just kind of goes by the wayside. So if you think you're going to stay at all relevant in your field or your industry because you might ever return or you want to stay a part of it, I would suggest teaching it, because if you can teach something, that means you really understand it.
And you're staying mentally awake. Listen, a lot of what happens with the dementia and the issues that we find when it comes to Alzheimer's, et cetera, there's studies that say the more active your brain is, everything from crossword puzzles to getting involved on a day-to-day basis with math problems or with solving issues, that is a very important part about staying mentally focused. Of course, eating well and staying active and movable, right? As we get older, it's not just about, I want to stay healthy. No, you want to stay active. Because if your hips and knees and your shoulders and your elbows, those things need to stay lubricated and you have to move, or you will end up being somebody who cares very little about the next thing and just wants to, sit and veg, and then it just is this downward spiral. So there's not a lot of excitement that comes from retirement and leaving your field unless you have something else to do. Look, there are a lot of people that are attorneys and CPAs that leave those fields that they have trained for completely and go on and become an artist or make pottery or be a docent. We have a family member who's a docent at a huge facility, has been for almost 20 years. He retired in his 50s, early 50s, as an engineer from a chemical company. And now he's a docent at a natural reserve and a museum. So those kinds of things keep you active. And when we saw him recently, wow, Ron, you still look very young. He goes, well, I'm 3 days a week. I'm out there and I help train new docents. And there's wow. So those kinds of opportunities are very helpful. We're going to come back in just a minute. We're going to continue with early retirement age. Could you retire at 62 and still find something to do? If the answer is yes, then maybe retiring early is right for you. But you're going to have to do things ahead of time. We have that and a whole lot more on your place for News Talk and Information. That's Jeff Gerard. I'm Arif Halaby on AM 1220 KHTS.